Well, hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, who's our lead solutions engineer here at Alpha. Today, Dion is going to give you a demonstration at the beginning of the session, and he'll be here to answer your questions. Two things you should know. First of all, this and other sessions like it are being recorded, and you can find them at videos.alphasoftware.com. And second, and perhaps more importantly, we are here to answer your questions. So please type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Hey, how you doing? It's good to hear your voice today.
Doing great. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
Thank you very much.
There's your screen. Excellent.
Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We have a real fun demonstration today. It's really an extension of our discussion of client-side charting, but it goes way beyond that in terms of Alpha's continued focus, energy, and efforts to make offline application development and management easy. That's one of the core reasons Alpha is gaining so much traffic in the marketplace, or traction in the marketplace, is that it really is the go-to solution when you're building an offline app. The ability to bring data down, work with it, edit it, and then put it back up where it needs to go. Very powerful. And I'm going to show you some techniques today that extend that capability in the last release. Very, very excited about showing you that today. Thank you very much, Dave. As always, this is about you. We need your questions. In fact, we got some great questions this week in email, and we're going to try to get to all those. Any that we can't do, we will obviously follow up with afterwards. But we want to say thank you so much for taking the time. The people who sent those in sent them to guides, that's Guides at alphasoftware.com, and Dave tracks those. We manage them and make sure we do it. But in our session today, we would love the opportunity to answer any of your questions. So take the time to look at your GoToWebinar control panel, go to the questions area, and in there you can submit your questions and we'll be available to help you with it. Really exciting. We're going to dive right into that demonstration. Again, like to always touch base on that we have our DevCon coming up after summer this year, and so if you can, take the time to go to alphasoftware.com and check out the information there. There's some amazing training sessions and other things that we'll be doing, and a great opportunity for you to meet other individuals, other developers, and build your ecosystem and support structure from there. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just dive right onto the demo. First, before I do that, is one to double check my sound quality, video quality, if it's working out okay.
Audio and video are coming through A-OK.
Awesome, awesome. So what we're going to talk today is about data series, and specifically the newer capability that was recently added to data series that allows you to develop offline or utilize that data in an offline manner. So what is a data series? Well, a data series has actually been in Alpha for years. It's actually been a core capability. It is a, it's used, oops, I'm sorry, I had them out of there. Let's go to that one. That's a little bit more there. Think of a data series as a connector, a pre-made connector to a data source. So it allows you to point and click and structure these, and I'll show you how we put together one in a few minutes here. But once you have that, then it manages all the interrelationship and getting that information. You don't have to write a whole bunch of code. It's actually automatic on how it does it. And what's very exciting is that we've now enabled the ability for data series to be used offline. Up to the latest release, data series were in the system, but there was a core assumption that you had a connection to your back-end system where the data series information was generated. And now that's been available offline. Along with that, and I'll show you, is a whole set of action JavaScripts that have been added and other JavaScript code that make it easy for you to manipulate the data. And what's really cool about this is that it opens up a lot of really neat opportunities beyond just the capability of bringing it down locally, but making it much easier for you to take this data and put it into some of your own JavaScript or whatever. And I'll show you some examples of how that works from that standpoint there. So as I mentioned now, data series can be used online and offline, and what's really powerful about them is they're very easy to manage. To put them together is point and click, and what's really good is that you have a lot of potential locations you can bring data from. In fact, a data series can be populated from multiple different sources, and you can have multiple data series in your implementation. First and foremost is SQL. You can have it come from a SQL backend database, and much like a grid and other things in list controls, you can filter that data. You can pass arguments to only get the data you want from that backend data source. You also can get it from DBF, traditional DBF, also custom, which is very powerful, meaning that you write a XBasic function that lives on the server, and the data series will automatically call that function, and that function will return that data, and now that data can now be present. Very neat opportunity, because you can basically take a web API and wrap it into a function. You can do fancy calculations. You can grab data from multiple databases, digest it, and then feed it back. The sky's the limit. And you can also use JavaScript to create the database series information. There's one other really cool thing. I'm not going to go into much detail on this today, but Alpha in the data series has what's called a SQL cross-section. And think of it as kind of pivot table capabilities. I think it's one of the most unique capabilities in here, and it's really cool, and it's fun to explore. There's some good videos on it. But what it allows you to do is say, let's say you have data in your database that's in a columnar format. You can translate that to turn it into from a row format. So let's say you had each region, and each region was a different row, but the way you wanted that data for your actual graph for use is each region will be a different column. And so SQL cross-section does sort of what a pivot table does in a spreadsheet, is it translates it from, say, a row to a column structure, and it's really, really powerful there. So very cool there. So those are the different sources that are available, and in the latest release, before, this little magic button right here was not available, but now you have this magic button, so it allows you to do any kind of data series work. And very powerful is now that by just clicking this little checkbox right here, once you set up the data series, the Alpha system will automatically, when a UX connects to a backend, it will download, put that information offline, so if you disconnect, it's still available. And that's really powerful for, say, dashboard applications and other, where you want to bring this data down and make it easy for you to present it to the people from that standpoint there. So with that, what I like to do is go into the development environment and show you how to build a data series, kind of talk a little bit more about the nature of the data series, but also beyond that is show you how you can use it with different kind of controls within the system. So with that, again, another quick process check. Dave, make sure everything's coming through A-OK.
Yeah, sure is.
Great, great, great. So I'm going to go into my Alpha development system, and for our new guests today, which we really say thank you very much for taking the time to visit with us. I am in the Alpha development environment, and this shows you I've got a lot of stuff in here because this is my demo one, but you have your different types of components here. And web series are associated with a UX, which is a form component. I've already created one. It was very simple. I just clicked New, selected Web Component, and UX. And a UX is our form, and really the heartbeat of any mobile application or web-based application. It's both. And by the way, don't dispel the coolness of having offline data for not a mobile solution but a web-based solution. One of the very powerful things about that is that since the data has already been brought down to the local browser, things operate much faster. So thinking like, say, a dashboard application, once this data is local, it doesn't have to call the server, so that updates on the website are just instantaneous. It's really cool there. So I've created one, so I'm going to go into my data series, into my UX. Now to access data series, you can go, there's two ways to get access to it. One way is to go to Properties and then search for Data Series. And once you are here, you'll see there's a data series. I can open it up. I'm in the editor. But actually a shortcut, just for people who are working with it, is that if you're looking at it, you can just go here to the mini icon bar, click Menu, and then go to Data Series Editor. and that does the same exact things. Just makes it a little simpler. You can get to the same location using two different methods. So here you'll see that I have 0 data series in here. Basically, I haven't created any yet. So I'm going to create one real quick and show you what it looks like. I'm going to actually create a couple so you'll see how quickly. And that's the neat thing about data series is that you could have many different data series. Let's say you had data series for data visualization, some others that are used for just presenting information that's important, many different ways to do it from there. So I'm going to start out here by clicking Add Data Series. I'm going to give it a name. I'm just going to call it Series 1, but you can give it a name so it makes a little bit more sense to you. And it says right here that a data series has been created, but the properties have not been set. So we're going to have to edit that. So I'm going to click here, OK. And so you'll notice I have a data series here. But you'll notice that it's got a little red icon there in undefined because we've it's a placeholder. It's now ready to be edited. So now I'm going to go ahead and click on Series 1 and click Edit Series Definition. So this is the heart. This is my data series builder. As you can see, as we mentioned earlier, we have the different ways we can create this. We can use SQL, a SQL cross-section, static, custom, etc. So let's start with a real simple one. I'm going to create it static. So I'm going to go here to static data, and you'll notice that there's a little connector here. I can go in here, and then I can start typing data. And you'll notice the data is field name, pipe, value. So this first row is the header. So think of it in a spreadsheet. You have a header row with sales and region, and then the data is below that, and you'll see the data is simply separated by a pipe character. And therefore, you can set it up that way. So it's a very simple structure in terms of what it's looking for. Now, I could type those in, but what's nice is Alpha adds some sample data. So if you were going to do a by par, let's see, yeah, let's do this, a bar or a pie chart, I'm just going to go in there. So you'll see it just had some pre-made data, which is really handy when you're playing around with this. You don't have to figure things out. So you'll notice that this data series consists of a country and a population. So USA, that seems low, 226, yeah, must be really old data, maybe from like the 1800s or something like that. Anyway.
317 was the last count, so yeah.
Yeah, so I'm guessing I'm going to update that. We want accuracy.
There we go.
So you can see Alpha's been around for a while. So anyway, I'm just glad they didn't have countries that don't exist anymore. That would be you know, like so, okay, so I've created this data series and I click OK. So I've set up my static data and I click OK, and so you'll notice now it's got a green series 1. It's a type of static, and here are the subseries, and we'll talk a little bit about what subseries are. Let's go ahead and add a second one while we're at it since we're here. So I'll go ahead and click here. I'm just going to call this series 2. Again, I've created it, but this doesn't have a definition, so I'm going to go ahead and open that up here. So let's make this one a little more interesting. I'm going to go to SQL. So now I'm going to populate this data series without static data. I'm going to use data from a database. So you'll see that I have SQL, and this will look very familiar to anybody who's done anything with grids, because first thing as soon as asking me, well, what's the connection string? Where's the database? Click this, select it. I'll select my database there. It's asking me how should I get that information. You'll notice that I can do a select fields, or I can do a full custom SQL statement, including calling stored procedures and all these other things here. So it's very powerful in terms of how you interact with that backend database. I'm going to make our life simple and just select a data series there. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and click table name. And I'm going to go ahead and I want current, which one is it? Which one? I had it. I think it's product category sales for 1995. By the way, I'm using the Northwinds database, created in 1995. But this is a view in the database called category sales for 1995. Now that I've done that, I can click field list, and I'm going to go ahead, and these are my two fields. So it inspected that database view, and it's telling me what's available here. So I'm going to click here and here, and so now I'm going to bring back these fields of data here. Now I can filter this. Powerfully, the nice thing about that is that I have my arguments here. so I can create arguments and pass them, so I can use those arguments for filtering. I have filtering and ordering and other pieces there. So I'll go ahead and just leave it as it is right now. Okay, so now I have two data series. Series 1, country and population. Series 2, which comes from SQL, and it's got category and category sales. Now, what does subseries mean? The idea is a series is a set of data, which could have multiple rows. I mean, it could have many columns, many subseries. So let's go ahead and say, okay, for series 1, let's preview that data. So I can actually preview the data right here. So when I click preview data, it's going to ask me a question. Well, okay, within this, which piece of data do you want me to display? The list of countries that are in there or the population? So I'm going to click country, and here's those countries. Remember that static data. Now if I do that again and I say population and say okay, here's the population. So very important concept, and I really want to get this across, is that when you have a data series, you have these things called subseries, which is basically your columns of information in that series. And later on when we start building components, the components are going to ask, well, what do you want to bring back from this data series? Which column are you going to use? And it will make more sense when I'm there. But I wanted to get that across. It's very important for you to understand that a series has a series or has what are called subseries, and think of them as the columns. Okay, let's go ahead. We've got that. That's cool. So let me show you a really cool example, and this has been around for some time, is that what we can do now that I've created those data series is that you'll notice there's nothing on the screen. Data series are behind the scenes. They're sort of like hidden capabilities that are in there. So I now am going to go down here and I'm going to pick chart. Now this is our traditional charting, which was built in many years ago. We now have JavaScript charting, which I'm going to show you in a few moments also. But I'm going to just go ahead and take this chart right here. And I'm going to call this chart 1. So I've done that. Click OK. And just want to do a process check. Is everything coming through okay, Dave?
Yeah, it sure is.
Good. It was quiet, so I wanted to make sure I hadn't lost everybody. So I have a chart right here. And I'm going to go ahead and double click to open this up here. And I can select then the type of chart. And again, remember, this is our traditional charting module that has been there for some time. So let's just do a pie chart, okay? So the data I'm going to get there. So the first thing it's asking me is, what data do you want to put in this chart? So when I click here, it says, oh, okay, let me add a data series to it. So basically I'm selecting what data series is going to populate this control, and more importantly, what is the sub-series I need. So for instance, I want to use my static data, and for the data, I don't want to use the country, I want to use the population. So I'm going to go ahead and click on there, and you'll notice that it's asking me, okay, great, we're going to use series 1 for this control, but for the data, what is the particular column you want to use? And so I'm going to click population and click OK. And so you'll notice that it's series1.population, and it gives me a preview of that. And if I wanted to, I could edit this data right here, or this server, and I'll go ahead and click OK. So now I'm saying that for the data for this chart, I want it to be grab the data from data series 1 and population. So now I click OK. Let's go ahead and save this, and we'll do a quick working preview, and you'll see there's my data. And you'll notice that the chart data is based upon the data column of population. So that's the key thing, is that when you're working with it, a series has not only the primary series, but that. Now the chart category, which is here, I don't want to use the data, I want to use the actual name. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to select series 1 because we're using the chart for the same data, but now I'm going to click country, because what I wanted to do is use country name instead of the data. And so let's do a working preview. And in a few moments you'll see, oh, that's, is it category or which one is it? Oh, I get confused on this one. Chart title, data, oh, there it is. Data label. Let's see if that worked properly. Yeah, there we go. So I did that very quickly, but what I did is the data is the actual numerics that decides the pie size. The label is ABCD, what it's going to show for each pie slice. So now I can do my working preview, and USA, UK, Canada, Australia, it's all set up properly there. Now, if I wanted to, I could go in here and say, you know what, I don't want to use that. What I'm going to do is for the data, I'm going to delete this. I'm going to add in my SQL data, and what I want to do is put in my category sales, because remember, that's my data. Name is the label. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to go ahead and delete that, okay, because I want to set up a new one here. And oops, insert chart, series, oh, no, wait, it's series 2 dot, let me look at this real quick. Sorry, wait a second here. It's series 2 category name. So apologize about that. So I'll just go ahead and just do series 2 dot category name. So from the series 2 SQL call, I'm using the category sales column for the data, and for the data label, I'm using category name. So I'm going to click OK, do a working preview, and if everything worked right, we now have beverages, condiments, confections. You can see it's pulling that from the database, and you'll see that it's setting the data to be here. Now, the reality is this chart, pie chart, that's kind of ugly. So let's just do a bar chart. And let's go ahead and do that. So as you see, once you've set up your stuff, it's really easy to change these things, and then I can start setting the height, the width, and everything. The idea is that the data series is your source of this information for this thing. And another cool thing about this is I can put in a button here, and let's go ahead and go down to other controls. I can go to button. I can go in here, and I have a data series actions, and I can tell it to refresh the data series. So let's say, so now what will happen is when I'm working with this, when I refresh the data series, it re-renders the graph. So let's say every once in a while this data is changing on a constant basis. When I click this, you notice there's like a little circle there because it's calling back to the database, it's running that query, it's bringing the data back, and it's updating the graphs that are associated with it. So it's really cool. You can make these really cool dynamic dashboards with this technology, and you don't have to do any coding to do it. You set up your data series, you connect it to. Now, to follow on with that, I want to talk a little bit more and show you a little bit more about data series, 2 other things about it. Let's check our time. Yeah, I want to spend another 4 or 5 minutes here. So I'm going to go back into my data series here, and I'm going to go to my SQL data series, and you'll notice that I haven't published these things offline yet. So I'm going to go ahead and enable that and enable that. So now, basically, all my data series are going to be published to the client side. That means that Alpha is going to take that extra step of not only calling the backend source, but then creating that information and storing it on the mobile or the website so it's available. And the cool thing about that now is that when I run this now, this data now is local, meaning that if I were to disconnect my computer from my backend data source, I would still have that data available. So when this chart rendered, it would still be able to get the data, because in that case, it's going to go to its local data source. It's not going to go back to the server to get that information. And where that becomes very important is in the area of what are called our JavaScript charts. So I'm going to go down here to other controls. I'm going to insert JavaScript chart. There's something here that keeps asking me to do something. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go to my JavaScript chart here. I'm going to go ahead and pick my, let's do a pie. Okay. And I'm going to click OK. So if I preview this chart, you'll see that immediately it's got some sample data in here. Now I can do something really quickly, and this takes a little bit more work, but you'll get used to it. You'll notice in here that this is the JavaScript that generates the chart. So you'll see that the data is like 1, 1, 1, 1. So I could actually change this to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if I preview the chart, you'll notice now the chunks of these are, they get bigger and bigger as they go along there. Now, this data right here is static, but guess what? I can highlight that area, click Select Data Series. Notice what it's opening up here. I'll go to SQL here, and I want to use, again, category sale, because it's the data. It's my column of the data values. So I click OK. So now you'll notice that it just put in this little piece of JavaScript right here. Dialog Object Data Series, Series 2 Category Sales. So now when this JavaScript runs, it's going to grab the Series 2 Category Sales. And since I've told it that it's offline, it's already going to be available on the local machine. So now you'll see when I hit Update, it actually did that information, and it was instantaneous because it already drew the data. Now the same thing is that you'll notice these labels are A, B, C, D. Well, notice down here we have this called labels. So I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to go here to Select Data Series. I'm going to select Series 2. Now instead of the data values, I want category name, which is the column there. Click OK. And now when I preview the chart, check it out. Beverages, condiments, seafood, produce, etc. Now I click OK. And in my user interface now, I have a nice looking regular chart, but I now also have this, and you'll notice kind of cool too there is that, oh, it's saying Alpha, Beta, Charlie. It's showing these here, but notice when I click on there, it's showing this data. Well, let's go in and look at that real quick. If we go in here, you notice, oh, the tooltips are still this static data here. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. I'm going to select a data series, Series 2, category name, because I'd like to have that category name show up. So I'll click OK, do my working preview, and voila. When I click on here, beverages, seafood. So you can see what it's doing is it's basically pulled that data down locally, and now it's substituting that data in the JavaScript. So when the JavaScript runs and creates the chart, draws the chart, it uses that data there. Now I want to talk about one other thing. And this is a little bit more geeky, a little bit more deeper, so bear with me here. But one of the things that's really important about this is the fact that this data now is local. And we have used it with a pre-existing chart. We've used it with a JavaScript chart, kind of there. But here's the cool thing. You can use it in any of your JavaScript scripts. So let me reopen this. You'll notice that the data, you'll notice that this little piece of JavaScript code right here, I'm going to copy that, gets that list of category names. So now what I can do is I can create a button here. Let's go to other controls, a button here, and I'm going to go ahead and say show stuff. Okay, so this button here, I can go right into my text mode and go alert. So what I wanted to do is show a quick little message box, and what I wanted to show in that message box is the category names. So let's go ahead and do the working preview. And now I've got, if I scroll down to the bottom here, got my new show stuff button. I can click there and check it out. Beverages, condiments, confections, dairy, etc. So here's the important thing, and this is so cool, is that once you set up your data series and you tell it offline, you can now in any of your JavaScript use this information. And if you're, there are people doing more stuff with jQuery and other things like that. So what we've done is opened up a whole way. You can use it with our pre-made charting capabilities, but maybe there's a third-party tool that draws like a water. Well, that's not a good example, but maybe it's a cool data visualization tool. Maybe it shows like an org chart, and you want it to feed it that data. Well, now what you can do with Alpha is you can let Alpha do all the hard work of querying the data, populating it, sending it to the mobile device, putting it into a local storage area. All you have to do is put in this little piece of JavaScript code into your overall JavaScript, and now you can leverage that local data. And that's one of the cool things. It was sort of like behind the scenes stuff that made it easy to do JavaScript charting, but now even more importantly, you have the ability to leverage that same technology to do it any way you want to. So I'm going to cut it off here just because I want to leave it open for questions. We really love your questions. But this is an introduction. quick rehab, you get to the data series editors through either the properties or data series editor. You set up a data series. It can be any one of these source types. The data series is going to be consistent of the series name and the sub-series. These are the columns that are going to be in here. By the way, these are fairly simple data series. You can create much more complicated ones too. And then once you have that, you can either use the built-in editors, say with our chart, where you could go in and just select the data series from a point and click, or you can go ahead and use our new JavaScript charting and just copy over the data, other pieces with that information there. By the way, this is a really good introduction to seeing how you can use some JavaScript in there. And last but not least is that data series, those commands are available here for any of your JavaScript scripts. So now you can leverage that local data, and what's great about it is you don't have any connection to the back-end system. That data is still going to be available to your scripts. Very fun, very exciting. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and cap it off there, pass it back to Dave, and any questions about this, and obviously we have some other questions that are, I think, queued up.
Excellent. Yes, a few questions actually. Let's start out with sort of a technical one, but there is a data series, sure, but there's also this thing called the client-side data cache. And can you explain perhaps the differences between those two? Or should we
Very good question.
Okay.
Very good question. So the client-side data cache is managed essentially the same way. If you go to menu here and then client-side data cache editor, you'll see that you have a very similar interface where you add an item, and we'll call this series 1. And then we edit that, and you can see that it's a nested query, etc. I'll just go ahead and do some static data here. So I'll select static data, and we'll go ahead and put in some static data. In this case, it's not the columnar, it's going to be a JSON representation. So very similar, and I could have done that from a SQL query, and it would have automatically brought that down from there. Now, the main difference with the data cache items is that they're really targeted for using with list controls. So when you build list controls, and more importantly, when you're using the form view and a UX to build forms, you can populate lists in that form using the data cache. So when you're using data cache, really think of it as a add-on capability to help you when you're building list controls and detailed view for list controls.
Excellent. Moving right along to the other questions. Here's a question, and this may have to do with what you were talking about before about Action JavaScript, although it may not. And the question is, how do you refresh a data series?
Excellent, excellent question. Well, first and foremost, I can go ahead and create another button here. So let's go ahead and go to button, and I'm going to go here and say refresh. And in here, we had, as we had before, we go to data series actions, there is refresh data series. You can also do read data series, like if you can manually read the data from there. Now, once I've set that in, and then I've selected my data series name here, I'll click OK here. Now I can go to this view JavaScript, and here is the code to do that. So I can simply grab this, copy it, and use it to do the refresh data series. So that's one trick, is always remember, when we do Action JavaScript, it will actually generate the code for you, but there's no reason why you can't grab this and put that into your scripts. And you'll see if I have multiple data series, I can change this, say, to series 2, and now it'll do a refresh from there. And the nice thing is that this is doing that AJAX callback back to the back end and running this refresh item here, so it knows how to do that from that standpoint there. And by the way, it gives you the opportunity, a lot more controls. Like for instance, if there's an error, you can actually write your own little function in here, say alert error. And this is more of a JavaScript kind of thing, but it gives you all the hooks to say, oh, if you're offline, give the user an indicator. If you're offline, don't do it, but do it from that standpoint there. So again, the way I did that, just to let you know, is that I added a new action. went to the data series actions. Let's go ahead and here, data series actions. And then I selected refresh data series. And when I did that, it created that, and then I can click view JavaScript, and it shows me the JavaScript that's created. And that's your best bet, because this is all pre-coded, ready to go. You can copy and paste this into anywhere you want to. And again, you can also edit it. So if you wanted to, you just say, oh, I want it from series 2 actually to do that refresh there.
That's great. Another question that's just about charting in general, but is there a way to create a chart where you click on it and it sort of drills down to give you more information?
Yes, actually you can. The new JavaScript charting has, I think the old one does, but the new one does have that ability where you can, when you click on an item in here, there is a way, and there is a video that actually shows and talks about how to do this and how to add that sort of dynamic behavior to this. So I don't have it here, but you can, there is a capability to allow you to, basically you can put in your own little JavaScript that says when it's clicked on it, run this JavaScript, and from there you can inspect and find out what was clicked on. One other thing that's kind of nice is that in here is this contracts with chart control. This talks a little bit of difference between which control is does what, and little differences between the two there. So let me think, where is it? Sarah might be able to put in there. There is a video that talks about doing dynamic charting. Now, in the older one here, if I go here, I believe there is some functions, events right here. Maybe not. I think you're a little bit more limited on that. In terms of making like drill down type charts. I think the new JavaScript charts are a little bit more flexible in terms of that, because they can trap when a person clicks on an item there. One other thing I want to talk about refreshing is that you'll notice that when I add the new action here, I refresh the data series. But if I have a JavaScript chart connected to a data series, I can just do a JavaScript chart action and do refresh data in the chart, and that will trigger the update of the data series for me. So that's kind of a nice little thing. If I just want to redraw the chart, meaning just you change a heading or something like that with the local data, you would use that. But this refresh data will actually refresh the data series that populates the chart from that standpoint there.
Great. So 2 more data series questions and then some other questions after that. We'll start with a short one, which is how much data can you send to the client?
Good point. Now, with this kind of capabilities, you're limited to about 5 megs of data. So you need to use your filtering to kind of keep it within control. What we're limited to is within the web browser, you have what's called local storage. And local storage is where this information, specifically where both the data cache and the data series are done from there. So think about 5 megs. Obviously, that would be the maximum you could really, because you're going to have other things in there. And that applies also to list controls. But I do want to let you know that as part of our ongoing crusade to make offline amazing for our developers, recently in the latest release, you can now store list data in the file system. So previously, much like client-side data caches, etc., you were limited by what was called local storage. There's a certain amount you were given. But in the latest release with list controls now, and if you're building in PhoneGap, and that's a very important caveat, because PhoneGap is what gives us access to local file system. The cool thing about list controls now is they can be massive, because now you can have tons and tons of data stored in local. You're not limited to your local storage limitation. You can now store it in the file system with PhoneGap, which is really powerful, because now you can use all the very easy to use builders within the list without having to do a bunch of funky stuff. And we have the ability to use, for instance, SQLite databases, and people, if they had very large data sets, would bring it down there. But now we're really just continuing to make it easier and easier for you to use that information offline. So back to your original question, about 5 megs of data is approximately what you're limited to from a local storage standpoint. I think Google Chrome now allows you to do a bunch more, but you can't guarantee that you're running on Google Chrome. So you have to kind of measure, you could actually detect and figure out what platform you're on, but that's a good kind of rule of thumb right now is how much data you can have.
Excellent. Another question, you were showing off how a data series can get data, say, from a SQL backend, but there was also an option that said that you could save it locally so that you could use it later on, and I think you were even demonstrating the use of it in a JavaScript script. The question they have is, when it's coming from SQL, what format is it saved in locally? What are you getting it back at? Are you getting it back as JSON or something else?
It's actually coming back as a JSON. Let me go ahead and open up the JSON chart. So if you'll notice, let me go back here. Let's go ahead and go new. It's basically it's coming back as a JavaScript array is what it's coming back. Let me create a new chart just to show you what the data looks like. Example of that. Container, let's see which, other controls. Let's go to JavaScript chart, let's go in here, I'll select a sample chart when it doesn't matter. Okay, so you'll notice that this is what the data looks like. This is a JavaScript array. Basically it starts with a little bracket and then you get 8, 5, 9 separated by columns. So the data that's coming back in a data series is going to be formatted in exactly this format. So you'll notice that's for numbers. For text, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. And a data series could have multiple columns, so each column set will be that. So when I placed in here and said edit select data series, basically it spits out the data in this format here. With a client-side data cache, it actually comes back as a JSON representation, so it's a JSON that you can use there. But from the standpoint of a data series, it's coming back as a JavaScript array for that column of data.
Great, thanks. And I think that's it for now for the data series questions.
Great, but I mean, awesome follow-on questions means people were watching.
So,
that's great.
So let's go for, there were a couple other questions that I think are a little easier, but we'll tackle this one first. A person wants to build 3 applications, and they were wondering, well, will Alpha let you do that? So can you have like an app server and host 3 different applications at the same time?
And the answer is yes. The way Alpha does our licensing is that one of our principles is we don't want to punish people for being successful, meaning that when you adopt the tool and you start using it, you're going to come up with great ideas and lots of ways to use it. And those could be multiple different applications. With Alpha, you're absolutely there. First and foremost, on the application server side, I publish the information to my server. And basically all I'm doing is putting all my files in a folder on that server. So on the server will be a master folder called A5 Web Root, and then each of the applications will be a subfolder under that. And so when you call that, you can call it through a web browser, you can hit any number of those applications. Now when you're developing mobile applications, what you can do is through the PhoneGap, again, same concept is that I can then publish up to PhoneGap build and build as many applications as I want. We don't charge you per application or per build or anything like that. Now there is a slight license fee for PhoneGap. If you get a PhoneGap build account, your first one is free, but then for like $10 a month you can build up to 20. You can have 25 apps being built. And in fact, that's a little deceptive because if I want to, I could build 25 apps, delete them, and then build a new set of 25 apps. It's just how many current sort of builds do I have in process. But again, you're not limited by us in terms of the number of those you can do. So for instance, we have a client that we're working with in Canada, and we've already developed 5 apps, and we're now working on our next 3 of them, and it's all on the same license for Alpha, meaning they're not getting charged something new for each one of them. So we explore you, do as many apps as you want. You don't have to make one big massive app. You can break it into multiple apps if you want to. Whatever works best for your business, we want to help support that as much as possible.
Excellent. Let me see. There are a couple other good ones here. Oh, here is a good one. So this person has a list control in their UX, and they have some images that are getting displayed in the records in that list control, but the images are all different sizes. So how do you constrain them so that they're the same size when you display them in the panel?
Great idea. And what you'll do is you'll a list control. Let me find a good one here. Let's see if this has got a good list control in it. Let's see. Okay. So this is, for people who are new, this is called list control. That's the heart of our mobile one. It basically not only brings the data down, but displays it. And when I'm developing it, there are two ways you can create your presentation. You can either use what's called a columnar format or freeform, up to you. In this case, this is freeform. So when I go over here to this tab right here, you'll see that I have in here just standard HTML. And you'll notice in this HTML that I have, for instance, company name and contact name. Well, over here you'll see there's a list of those fields. So these are the fields that are in your list that have been brought back from your data source. And all I'm doing is putting those fields in here, and then when alpha for each row, it's going to substitute that. And click when I put preview list, you'll see that we have some JavaScript, but now you have Alfred's right here, the company name, and there, and you'll notice it's using two different styles. Well, you'll probably have another one here called, like, just pretend fax is the picture of the person. So I could put in fax right there. And again, play along with me. If I do preview list here, you'll notice that it just put that data value in front of it there. Now, what's great about that is that this could be an image. Once you've established that that item is an image, and you can use in here standard sizing parameters. So I can go to my fields here. If fax was instead of a, it would show up as an image here. I apologize, I don't have a really good example here. But what's important is in your list layout, you can put any directives in here that you want, because this is just going to spit out that image tag. And so you're able to actually go in and change the image tag, so you can put in that HTML right here. So for instance, you could put a class for this div, which would constrain the size of this div to a certain width and height. And by doing that, then the browser will limit that image to those sizes. So think of it, you have to think at that point in terms of HTML and how to use the HTML tags to do that. I'm trying to think if there's a way. Let's see, control type, let's change this real quick to an image here so it pretends to be an image, even though that data wouldn't render. But you also have inline style here. So the idea is that when I put this indicator right here, it's just going to shove my control right there. So by saying that it is a fax here, I can go to my inline style. And what my inline style is, now I can put anything here. So I can go down to width. Oh, that's border. I want to go to, let's see, alignment, positioning alignment. So what I can do down here is I can say the width is, say, 50 pixels and the height is 50 pixels. So what I did is I went to inline style for this, and now when it inserts that into it and renders it, you'll insert the HTML directives to say the image should be only this big or this big. But you'll notice that I'm not just limited to that. So that's the easy way to do it. But you could also go in here and let's say H1, and I wonder if this will blow up. We'll find out in a moment. Preview the list. Okay, check it out, much bigger, because the web browser just said, oh, I see an H1, so I'm going to take whatever it's given to me and make it much bigger. And so you can apply your own styling to this. You can do everything you want. But the quick and dirty is just setting the inline style on the field to be a width and a height, which is down here at the positioning and size. But you're not limited to that. So, you know, that's quick and dirty, because what it will do is in that little fax, or when the little, between the curly cues, it's going to put an image tag in there, but it's also going to add this other stuff to it. So there's sort of two ways to skin the cat on that.
Great, excellent. Back to the data series again for a question, for a moment. Can you use the data series to populate drop-down boxes?
Yes, you can. Since that data series data is, is available, you could write a little JavaScript to then do the drop-down box. And in fact, there's a video on that. There's a great video that shows you how to use JavaScript to populate a drop-down box and do it on the fly. And now what's nice is with the data series, that data is local, so you can say, oh, I want the drop-down box to be data series 1. And then let's say for whatever reason you want to change that, on the local device without making a call back to the server, you can say repopulate that drop-down box with series 2 dot, whatever it happens to be. But there's a video on it. Let's see. If Sarah's online, it just is alpha dynamic drop-down box. I can search for it in a moment, but it's a very handy way to do it. And so in that scenario, they're showing you more of like calling back to the server and doing that stuff. Well, you can adapt that same thing now, but instead of going to the server, all you need to do is now use this as your data that goes to your drop-down box instead of like a call back to the server, since this information is going to be available on the local machine and ready to go right away.
Terrific. Yeah, and if we can find that video, we'll post it here. If not, just send an email out to guides.
Actually, let me see.
Yes. See if you can.
Yeah, I'll find it real quick.
All right, excellent.
You guys get to watch me use Google. How about that? Alpha 5 dynamic drop down box. Or I think it's repopulate. There's actually, what happened is Alpha actually, or the development team added a command for that. So let's see if this pulls up. But go ahead and queue up the next question while I bore everybody with a Google search.
Sure. Wait a minute. Let's take a look in our chat window.
Aha, here we go.
Let's see if there's an answer to this.
There it is, V11. Ooh, I like this one. This is the one you want to watch. Refresh the choices in a drop-down box. It's kind of cool.
There's also documentation as well. Let's. I'm going to go ahead and share that link.
Yeah.
Click and copy that. I'm going to send that to everyone here. Paste. Okay. If anyone wants to take a look at their chat window, we do have a link there on dynamically repopulate choice in a drop-down box. It's in our new documentation system, and it shows you how to do that.
And I just threw in there that YouTube video that shows you someone walking through how to do that too, just as extra stuff. Go to documentation first. Highly recommend.
Go to documentation first, absolutely, because more and more
otherwise,
the documentation itself, the videos are linked in the documentation. So
excellent.
You get the best of both worlds.
Well,
when you get there and you say, this isn't quite what I'm looking for, there's always a link on that documentation page to click on. It has like a little flag icon. And and when you click on it, you just explain what you're looking for and that you haven't found it, or that the article that you're in didn't do a good enough job explaining it. And we actually have a team monitoring that communication back from the documentation system, and we usually very quickly make updates to it.
And one other note too, and this is the fact that the internet never forgets, is the fact that some of the techniques that are in some of the videos you'll find are dated, meaning there's newer, better ways to do things. And so one of the key principles of our documentation team was not only most up-to-date accurate, but more importantly is get rid of the old stuff and make sure people are using the latest and greatest techniques to do things. Because it was easy to find like an old tough way, and then the development team added a single command, and now it's a single command to do the same thing that took like 5 or 10 lines of code. So totally agree with you that the documentation is the place to start. I was just a bad person there. A bad person.
Okay, so we had that one. Last question I see here. Trying to see if there are any more about data caches, and I don't see any. I see someone here who's got their hand raised. If you do have a question, I know we
Or else they have to use the bathroom. Or else they have to use the bathroom. One of the two.
That's right. The hall pass is up front. Just go ahead and type your questions into the question box at the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will be happy to answer them. Let me see. We had another couple ones that were emailed in today. I don't know that we have the answer.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. And we're going to try and get that information back to you so you don't have to wait until our next one. That's the other thing nice about emailing us, is that when we get the answer, we'll get it back. But we will cover those in our next webinar when we get a chance. But we really appreciate it, and we want you to continue sending that over. Try to get it in a couple days early. That way we have time to make sure we're ready to go.
So a couple questions about charting and also about displaying dates and times in charts. If you have a field which has a date time value in it, or just even a date value in it, can you make your application switchable between the European format, which is day, month, year, kind of the way I think it makes sense, or the American format, which makes less sense to me, but month, day, year. Can you switch those around?
Absolutely. Well, the question would be if they don't mind putting as it on the fly they want a date. Do they want to do that on the fly or when the system loads up kind of scenario?
It seems, let's just assume that this is being created for the European audience, so they want to be able to do it just the one way, just the European way, let's say.
Gotcha. Okay.
We'll start the easier of the two.
Right. So, so with the date time, you'll notice I've set the type of date, and now I can go to the where is it? The display. That's the field label.
Now might be a good time to use that magnifying glass and show people what that does.
I know. Where is that? There's properties right there.
Yep.
And it's format. Display format. Duh. Thank you very much. Click properties. Guessed it. Display format. There we go here. So this is the display format for date and time. So I can go in here, and this allows me to then select pre-made ones, etc. But what's very important is that I could set this at this level right here, but the challenge is if I've got like 15 date fields, if I ever want to change it, I have to go through and change every single one. But this allows me to set like a date or a currency kind of pieces there, and I can actually see what it's going to look like right here. But notice here, what is dialog client-side data format? Well, what this is that you can set a default in here. So let's go up here, click date, and we can say date format, and that allows us to generate what date format we want to be. So for instance, in Europe, it'd be day, month, and maybe time is differently there. Now, this date format here, when I'm actually on a date time element, I can say the display format should be the client-side data format. So I can say put in, there you go. So now what's going to happen is notice, check it up, it already picked it up right there, that here's my format. It's looking at the UX to set what that format is, and then once you've set it at that level, and you put this in each one of your items, then if you ever change that, then all the text boxes are all going to change to the new format. Now, what we've done here is this is essentially hard-coded into this UX. So this UX then will present dates always in a European fashion or whatever fashion you want to call it from that standpoint there. But there are mechanisms that you can write which will allow you to on the fly change that date formatting. It's up to you on how you want to do that. But the key thing you want to look at is if you want to set the display format for a specific date, you could do it right here in the control itself. But I highly recommend you use the dialog client-side data format. Thus, so notice I go here, I say that, click OK. It's going to pick up my master format at the UX level, and then if I ever change it, I only have to do it in one spot. So that's a little bit of how to set your date formats for the different pieces there. And I wonder if there is a, I wonder if there's a, let's see, client-side date format. Well, let's do this. Let's go here. Sorry, bear with me. Go to Help, Documentation. Sarah may already have found this here, but I'm thinking maybe there's some a function that allows you to change that on the fly, which is kind of cool because then you could literally change it. I haven't done that myself personally, but this is taking its moment to update. In the meantime, cue it back to you. I think, see if there we go. I'm doing too many things on this machine. It's time to get a new machine. New machine.
Bigger machine. Faster machine.
Yes. Well, just lots of memory.
Lots of memory, yeah.
See.
Now your spelling is funky, but look, it's figured it out because of our search engine has fixed it for you. Now there you go, client. Yep.
There's client-side formatting, talks about how to do that. And then the secondary links on here. Let's see if there's any client-side events. Yeah, right now it's that piece there. But I wonder if there is that's the piece there. Well, that's what I'll have to do a little research to see how you would do it dynamically.
So we can get back to you next time with that. And there's another question which we're not going to get to today, but we should definitely get to next time. And that's because this happens all the time. There's a server that's hosted in another place than where the user is. They're at a different time zone. So the date timestamps say I'm hosted in Texas or in Texas, but here I am in Boston, and it's an hour difference.
I can tell you right now the way to solve that.
Yep.
Really just the 1 minute direction is that you store all information as UTC under universal time formatting in the database, and then you can do an offset within Alpha. So yeah, we'll follow up with that to highlight these specific capabilities. But you're right. Like if everything's on a server, if I'm in California and my server's in Dallas, then every time I save a record, it's Dallas time. So what you want to do is save it as UTC format. Therefore, all the dates are consistent throughout your system, and every date that's saved, date time, is always on the is linked to UTC. Then there are a number of functions that then allow you to display what that offset is to where you're at. So you can detect where you're at and say, okay, now do that. But the important part about that is that allows you to kind of compare dates side by side, meaning that you know that all the dates are basically based on the same criteria in your database. So if you're saying which one happened first, you don't go, well, oh, this one was in California, no, it's all just UTC. Right. And you can do that from there. And Alpha has built-in capabilities to handle, it's got built-in functions to handle UTC and a lot of other functions to do things like figure out what day of the week you are, work day, and things along those lines.
Okay, got it. Excellent. Someone just, we do need to go. We're a minute past time, so I want to thank you very much, Dean, for presenting, and thank you for everyone who had questions. There are a couple questions in here that we didn't get to. There's one about date time data for charting. Please, if you could send that into guides, GUIDES@alphasoftware.com, we could take a moment to take a look at it and give a better answer to your question. So thanks very much to everyone who attended. Thanks again for the question askers especially. We hope to see you next week. Take care. Have a great week.